I'm going to read the beginning of a short story that involves child star Alyssa Milano, but I don't know if I'll get that far, we'll see. And it's narrated by a young man named Ken. I'm not going to do a man voice, so I thought I'd tell you. It's called Lab Rats. It was a warm San Francisco night, and I came home to my studio apartment. I threw my messenger bag onto the pile of old Us Weeklies on the table, but it slid and hit the wall and knocked down this tapestry I'd hung over that stupid hole in the plaster, so that white crap was everywhere. It's real stuffy. I lived above those bastards at A Taste of India who were cooking up a storm. All the heat was rising right up with that nasty sweet smell of cardarand or whatever you call it. I opened my one window that wasn't painted shut. I was beat from 6 hours of massaging these blonde marketing chicks. Plus, my tooth whitening strips had gotten fucked up because those bitches wanted to talk so friggin' much. So my teeth would still be stained for my Marshall's modeling audition the next day. By the way, I'm not vain enough to be randomly bleaching my teeth. I'm a model actor, pale skin, dark hair, and those ruddy Irish cheeks almost like a makeup artist applied rouge to me every day. I probably got some Irish blood, but I'll never know since my great-grandmother was such a slut that she got knocked up by some guy who was passing through town. Got a strong body, especially my arms and hands from the masseuse gig, and the people at every single audition say I've got good teeth. Good teeth. Makes me feel like a horse, but whatever. To top it all off, earlier someone had stolen my bike from work. I had locked up the tire this way my friend Wayne had told me, but I guess it was the wrong way. So I planned on lying on my futon, mixing myself a nice shaker of Manhattans and watching the Independent Film Channel to see which 20-something fuck was the new it boy. I liked swearing at the TV like it was a football game. I hit the futon and the freaking phone rings. Excuse me. I screamed, Lynn. I was hoping she could come over, so I picked up. She was all weird, like, Ken, we need to talk. I sat there in the dark trying to think of when her last period was. Didn't I see one of her nasty bloody tampons in the trash just a few weeks ago? She finally arrived with pot brownies. She was wearing lipstick and had even blow-dried her long hair all nice, and I knew I was in trouble. Then she told me with a mouthful of chocolate, I signed up for a study at this lab. Is it like sleep deprivation, I asked? No. I was kind of buzzing at that point, so I said it. If I was a scientist, I'd study the biggest unsolved mystery of all, the female orgasm. Lynn rolled her eyes, but she only got off every other time we had sex, and honestly, I didn't know what the hell did it for her. I just kind of played around down there with my fingers and tongue until her body rose up and she started getting louder, saying, oh yeah, do that again. But seriously, no idea. Yeah, if I was them, I'd be studying that problem, I said. They'd save every frickin' marriage if they could figure that out. Well, this one is a sex study, she said, for couples. The room was swirling around us. I screamed, that's disgusting. Ken, she said, I haven't even gotten a phone interview in weeks. You need the money too, it pays $1,500. I have some auditions coming up. You haven't had a gig in months. Oh, thank you. You can't even buy real coffee beans. And don't you want to get out of this rent-controlled hole? Move to LA with me like you always talk about? I had to eat, had to think. We moved to the kitchen. What's the study about, I asked, as I cooked huevos rancheros and she fanned the smoke alarm. I don't know, it just said have sex, get paid. Then what kind of a pussy would let his girlfriend talk him into something like this? Ken, P-word. Sorry, but I know those studies, those ads you see in the back of the weekly paper, right next to those blowjobs and slippery nipples ones for bartending school. So what kind of freak does those studies? She looked at me poutily, and then she had to go and put her damn hands on me, and we ended up on the kitchen floor for half the night. Normally, I didn't know if I wanted to marry her, but that night I could have. The words almost fell out of my mouth. I had to hold it in. I love this, I said. Yes, I love sex. Yes. On Monday, Lynn made me wear a jacket and a tie to the lab and told me not to smoke up before we went. But I took a few hits off an old joint in the bathroom and sprayed Lysol over my clothes right before we left the house. That's why she loved me, because I was kind of hot and I made her laugh, but I'd straighten up for her when she needed me to, when it really mattered. The guy supervising this study, old Dr. Johnson, with his lopsided mustache, met us in the lobby and took us into his cush laboratory office. You know, the kind with the big wooden desk and the huge brown leather chair, and his tennis racket in the corner, and all his diplomas and pictures on the dark paneled walls that smelled like cedar. It was the kind of place where you could tell somebody they're dying of cancer and they might just breathe a big sigh and let their shoulders slump down instead of yelling and screaming and crying and breaking things. Go about your daily routines as usual, said Dr. Johnson, and of course have sex whenever you want with condoms. Please, I thought, condoms? It's like an evolutionary step backwards. One of the big pluses of having a girlfriend is that you do the third date at the AIDS clinic and she gets on the pill and then you don't have to deal with that rubber crab. I took a deep breath. After sex, said Dr. Johnson, you are to save as much of your sperm as you can and then put everything into the sample collection bags we have provided you. He handed me a box of them. I thought they'd give us some iPod-looking machine that would suck the sperm out of Lynn or something, but they were just baggies. They look like big Ziplocs, I said. They are Ziplocs, he said, basically. Lynn, you will record your periods, and Ken, you will record your masturbation on this chart. What? I said. Write down the number of times you masturbate per day. Of course I'll underestimate, I thought. Please don't underestimate, he said. We have no room for embarrassment in this study. It's a perfectly natural activity for men to do every day, even more than once a day. Lynn laughed. Doctor, I said, why doesn't Lynn have to write it down too? Ken, Lynn glared at me. I'm sorry, said Dr. Johnson, but this is all the information I can give you at this point without compromising the data. I can answer any questions afterwards. So I'm going to take a sip of water. All right. So then Dr. Johnson tag-teamed us with his coworker, Randy. Skinny, tall, spastic Randy, who wore those short-sleeved, striped old man shirts to try and look mature. Randy, who had no color in his skin, or eyelashes, or eyebrows. Red-headed Randy, who looked like he'd get diarrhea if he even had a sip of caffeine, even a Coca-Cola. Randy was the man who would be asking us about our sex lives. He tried to act cool and casual, slouching down in his chair a little so he was our height, balancing the clipboard on his knee. He was using one of those Eraser-Mate erasable pens from the 80s and not even retro-ironically. Okay, he said, I just have to ask you some general questions about your relationship. His face was already turning the color of his hair. He looked at the clipboard instead of us while he talked. And of course, all this information remains anonymous and confidential. We try to run a professional joint here, he said. Neither of us laughed. He coughed. Okay, how long have you been together? Lynn looked at me and smiled. I froze. She was waiting for me to answer. Oh, I guess, what, a year? She glared. Over a year. Lynn sighed. 2 years next month, she said. Then Randy got to the good stuff, and man, he could hardly even talk. Do you think your partner is faithful to you? I mean, he asked. Yes, we said. I was doing this awesome Zeppelin drum solo with my fingers on the desk, but then Randy gave me a look and I had to stop. How many times a week do you have sex? He asked. We argued about it for a minute before deciding on 2 or 3, depending on the week. Randy's face was wet. Okay, good. Of those times, how many out of those times do each of you achieve orgasm? Jesus, I said. Ken, said Lynn. I apologize, said Randy, but this is completely relevant to the study. He was still staring at the floor. I'm sorry, Randy, said Lynn. Let's see, Ken, of course, achieves orgasm pretty much every time, and for me, well, honestly, and we do appreciate your honesty, said Randy. I probably do once every 7 to 10 times. I thought I saw a small smile on Lynn's face. What? I said, just because you're mad at me, don't. It's the truth, Ken, and if you really cared, you'd ask me about it more instead of just assuming I do because I'm making some noise and moving around or maybe even sweating. Also, just because you're pissing me off, I'll say that you smoke up too much and it affects our sex life. She turned to Randy and leaned forward. I took him to Shakespeare in the Park and he didn't even remember the name of one character. One character. Whoa, okay, we're just collecting some numerical data, said Randy. No anecdotal evidence, please. But how can you make sense of anything without a story? I first met Lynn at the Hilton downtown. We sat next to each other in a typical Philip Morris focus group in a huge crystallized ballroom. We decided to completely lie about all our data and opinions. Sticking it to the man, I said, but we still cashed their paycheck, suckers. She laughed at that one. Her eyes sparkled like the big cheesy chandelier. She said she liked funny guys. It must have been fate when we met again at the gin focus group at the Marriott, which led to gin cocktails afterwards at the top floor bar, complete with pink walls and a sad piano man singing Streisand. We laughed about it all. We were flying so high. We were above everything. Then we got all hot in my car when I dropped her off, and then she gave me the whole I'm not ready thing. Next time we hung out on her torn blue velvet sofa, and she finally let me in her pants for a few minutes, but she held out until the third date for sex. And believe me, waiting to bone does not make it any better, because the first time is always weird and strange, you know? She made sure we had 5 maker's marks, and she had on this crazy belt I couldn't figure out. It's like some 80s thing where you had to unsnap the buckle. My arms were shaking as I was trying to hold myself up to bone her. "We'll get you a Bowflex machine," she said. But I'd been riding my bike and skipping the gym, and God, the first time you do it, why does the girl always want you on top doing all the work anyway? Now, once we busted through that, we just fucked like dogs everywhere. In the basement at her friend's house party, outside, you know. I guess it's always like that in the beginning. But then you start fucking talking. Lynn was the one who started it, of course, in my bed, Sunday morning, sunlight streaming through the broken Venetian blinds at insane angles. We had just done it again, and it was hot, and I was about to fall back asleep. I was mad vulnerable, and she pounced. "What are we doing?" she asked. Oh no, the old "what are we doing" talk. Exactly. Ken, we both need AIDS tests. You're so romantic. And VD tests too, because I'm going on the pill. The pill, the patch, the sponge, lube. It was like an avalanche. Then she goes, "Is there anything you want? I mean, anything that I'm not doing yet that you like?" This, of course, meant I was supposed to ask her about her orgasms, but not before I requested the old naughty Catholic schoolgirl role play as an exchange. "Do you have a plaid miniskirt?" I said. "Can you braid your hair?" After that, sometimes the sex was more of a job. She started bossing me around, like touch me there, or no, do that other thing again. Man, I clocked tremendous hours to find the correct order of rituals to get her off. And once you bone a girl for a couple weeks, you pretty much know what sex is going to be like for the next 40 years, if it even lasts a month. So then I had to think about whether I could really be with just one person for the rest of my life. Maybe evolution has made us too smart in some ways. It's like this fuck for all now, and you just don't even have to make babies, so like, what's next after that? What's left? If I was one of those scientists, I'd study that part. But I couldn't tell Randy all this. Lynn and I would show him and Dr. Johnson in the world. We would have so much sex, the Ziplocs would overflow with our love. Damn, they'd say, this guy is something else. He must have elephant genes in the dick. I mean penis. The science guy would definitely say penis. Yeah, we'd show that Randy, and then I'd tour around with the scientists and have press conferences and do talk shows. Oprah would come out of retirement just to interview me. Not fat Oprah, skinny Oprah. And I'd just tell her, "No, Oprah, I don't know why I produce this much sperm." And she would nod and say, "Yes, yes," in her husky voice. And she would reach over and touch my knee and make a joke, something like, "Come on over to my house anytime." And I would look into her huge, oval, alien eyes. Those eyes of hers that take up half her face and make her look like one of those Walt Disney characters, like the Little Mermaid. Oprah's huge eyes would penetrate mine, and then we'd hook up for a while, and even have threesomes with her creepy friend Gail if she wanted to. She'd buy me a few things, like a white Beamer convertible and a little orange bungalow in Malibu, or a condo in some complex with a pool, like on that show Melrose Place, where all the hot neighbors sleep with each other. I'd eventually have to end things with Oprah, though, because of all the sneaking around behind Stedman, and because of all the girls who'd want to meet me, Mr. Elephant Dick. I would impregnate several of those girls, and we'd live in a harem in my bungalow in Malibu while I made my movies. Yeah, we'd show that, Randy. Thank you.